Mike's Daily Podcast.
Episode 1451, 1451. If you missed my 1450 show yesterday, I suggest you listen to it because I talked about some very cool people that I've worked with at a radio station that had the frequency 1450. But my name is Mike Matthews here at Cafe Anyway, located somewhere in Podcaster Valley, Mont, and I think that I've intrigued you.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
With that setup, haven't I? No? Coming up on today's show, maybe I have to talk like that. We've got
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Shelley Schuhart, Floyd the Foreman, and John Deere the Engineer, plus a segment called News Random. And there's some people in the world of fandom that like the Incredible Hulk. I guess because he's green. I don't really know what I mean. But he wasn't in the last couple Marvel movies, was he?
Mike's Daily Podcast.
I thought he was supposed to be in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, because he's up in space now, flying around. I don't know what's going on now. So,
Mike's
whenever I try to talk
Daily
Marvel comic movies
Podcast
with people, they look at me like,
yeah!
Oh yeah, they had a movie out. I don't know what's going on. Stop talking to me. Did you know you can subscribe to the Mike's Daily Podcast email? It's at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com. A guy I work with at my weekend station. Oh, don't get me started on the weekend radio station I work for. That part-time job is giving me... Look who walked in.
Hello, Mike Matthews. It's Shelley Schuhart, gift shop supervisor. Is giving you a headache?
You're not giving me a headache, Shelley. You're wonderful.
Thank you.
You're wonderful and you're beautiful.
Thanks, Mike Matthews. I appreciate it.
I just tell you what I observe. So
That's all right.
look who else walked in. Oh, Mike, this is Floyd the Foreman. And this is John Deere the Engineer. Mike, I heard you had some issues with Valentina the parking attendant yesterday. Yes, the last show, Valentina and Bison Bentley, they troubled me. They troubled me because their character arc, I don't know where to go with the arc. I feel like the arc is on its way down and it's going to sink. And I don't know what to do with them. So you can have your suggestion about what you think should happen with Valentina the parking attendant and Bison Bentley by calling me at 336-MM-DAILY. That's 336-MM-DAILY or 663-2459.
And here's today's podcast picture.
I went to a place called the Dancing Avocado in Daytona Beach. I'd never been there before. It was the last day, well, supposedly supposed to be the last day that I was going to be in Daytona Beach with my mom. And she's like, where do you want to go tomorrow morning? Your last day here before I drive you to the airport. And I said, I don't know. So I used Yelp. By the way, I've deleted a couple apps from my phone. Somebody said to me, hey, why don't you download this app to your phone? Some stupid app. And I'm like, no. First off, I have a Samsung. And Samsungs are different than iPhones in that you can put a lot of memory on. You can keep adding memory. You can add those little chips, discs, or whatever they call them. I don't do that because I'm cheap. At some point I'll buy one. But right now I'm just using the memory that it came with. And quite frankly, I don't see why I need a bunch of apps on my phone that I don't need, that I don't ever use. And Instagram is one of those. I'm done with Instagram. It is a horrid waste of time. I'm sick of seeing Lena Masitsi with her beautiful, beautiful face filming some funny thing that happened to her in New York. And she travels every single one of her little story videos, she's in some new location, new locale. She's in Greece. She's in Arizona. She's in New York. She's in San Francisco. She's always with some new cute guy, and it just irritates me. So I said, I don't need this irritant, so I deleted Instagram off my phone. However, I still have an Instagram account, and you can see the podcast picture at it. At Instagram, whatever, Mike's Daily Podcast. That's my handle, is Mike's Daily Podcast on there. And, oh, well. Anyway. Cafe anyway. I don't need Instagram, and I found I don't need Yelp. This Yelp used to have all these cool deals on it, and now I don't see any anymore, or it's at places I have no intention of going to. So, bye. I'll use the Google thing that pops up in my maps that also tells me about restaurants. Because all I'm really interested in is restaurants. Until I have a plumbing problem. And I actually found my plumber on Yelp, which actually was not the best of things, because this guy talked my freaking ear off like I'm talking yours off right now. So I'm not a fan of Yelp. I'm not a fan of Instagram. I'm definitely not a fan of Facebook. And I was listening to a great podcast by the wonderful Warren Alney, the show called To The Point. And in it, he was discussing Facebook's role in the election and how the Russians, through these secret IP addresses and accounts and whatnot, were able to buy all this ad time on Facebook. And I talked about it a little bit the past couple shows, and I have a problem thinking that Facebook, one social network, could actually change the outcome of an election. I don't like to give Facebook that much power. But then I talk to people here in the Bay Area, one guy in particular, who all I ever see him, he's either on Facebook on his work computer or on his smartphone. He disagreed with me. He's like, oh no, people are stupid. They'll believe anything they see on Facebook. But then I go to Daytona Beach, I'd go to the other coast, I go to the south, I go to Florida, and I'm having dinner with people older than me and people my age, and they are like, what? Facebook? Never on it. It's a waste of time. What I'm saying is, I don't think everyone's drank the Kool-Aid. I don't think Facebook has, I hate that expression, by the way, and this year was the anniversary of that happening, 40 years ago? That whole Jamestown thing. But I think people, here's how we fix this whole situation. Stop going on Facebook. Period. Get off Facebook. I'm only on Facebook promoting my podcast. That's it. I kind of I will go on it for a couple minutes, but I really limit myself, and I feel like some people waste all their time. I do not have the Facebook app on my phone. Oh, hell no. Or the Messenger app. No. That's wrong, and people, we need to, if we've learned anything from this whole election, it's we need to unplug from Facebook. Facebook has got too much power. It's so funny, because when did I get on Facebook? 2009. Back then, you'd mention to people, yeah, Facebook, I'm on this thing called Facebook. They'd laugh. They'd go, what's that? What is that, like MySpace? What's that all about? And it was a joke. And now it's bigger than TV, all the networks combined. So I hate Facebook. I've never liked Facebook. That Social Network movie, that painted it all clear to me. That's what Mark Zuckerberg's all about. That's where it all came from, was a stupid college frat boy fantasy. Anyway, we have to get away from Facebook. Cafe anyway. So this guy I know at my weekend job, where apparently this other guy that I work with tried calling me last night when I was asleep. Luckily, I had my phone off. Tried to call me and ask me a stupid question that he could have figured out on his own. Okay, I'm going to be more positive the rest of the show. But don't you love that when people try and call? I have to be at my other job at 4 a.m, so I don't know why he thought he could call me. I've told him, never call me after 7 o'clock at night. And he did, because he doesn't listen, because he's a millennial. I'm not saying I guess I just said all millennials don't listen. But, he's really bad. I think other millennials would be, this guy, he needs to listen. Okay, I'm taking my brush, I'm putting it away. I'm done doing the broad brush strokes. But another millennial I work with, very nice guy, we were discussing Prince, and he said, that drum sound came from something that Phil Collins did. That drum sound that you hear in, what were we listening to? I think it was Kiss by Prince. And he sent me a YouTube video about it, and it's a really splashy, flashy video aimed towards the ADD generation, because it's got all these quick edits and cool graphics, and the music changes, and everything's moving along, and it's all flashy. And in this young gal is talking about how somewhere in 79, where she was not even a thought in her parents' minds, there was this thing where I guess Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins... Oh, Phil Collins was playing on Peter Gabriel's third album, supposedly. The Melting Face one. Or is that the second one? I forget. But Peter Gabriel... Which I did not know Peter Gabriel played on Phil Collins played on Peter Gabriel albums, but it makes sense because they were both in Genesis. And Hugh Padgham... And I had always been calling him Hugh Pagdam. So that corrected me in that documentary. The famous producer, he produced not only Genesis, but The Police, and then later Sting. He also produced Melissa Etheridge's big album that had Come to My Window, Wait Outside, and I'm the only one who walk across the fire for you, Hugh Padgham. Apparently, Phil Collins was playing on the drums, and they did something to the drums where Peter Gabriel really liked the reverb sound on the drums. And they discovered, according to this documentary, gated reverb, where when you take a drum snare, this pop sound of the drums, and instead of having the sound of the drum fade out, as once you strike the skin, pop, letting it fade out like that sound just did, you carry the sound, the weight of the drum, with the sound of reverb, and instead of the reverb fading out, it goes even louder towards the end. So it's pop, whop, like that kind of thing. And apparently that's all 80s music was influenced by that. And then it went away in the 90s, and we got back to real drum sounds with bands like No Doubt with their ska albums, and other bands that were out in the 90s rather. Got more back to a real sort of drum sound, just recording the drums as they are. But then, in the recent years, you've got a bunch of bands like the Bleachers and others who love that sound again, and Taylor Swift using that sound again, that gated reverb sound. Anyway, I sent an email back to my friend at my other job and said, hey, some of this is true, some of this isn't. I think it's too flashy. I didn't like the long audible commercial at the end of this video. But thank you anyway. And apparently you can Google these gated reverb drum sounds and download them. And I might do that and make a new song at some point. I have to do some more songwriting. I feel as if I've been neglecting that talent. Right, if you want to call it a talent. So, the podcast picture is of a place in Daytona Beach called the Dancing Avocado, where my mom and I went, and I had a delicious pastrami sandwich. But actually, it's more of a, a vegetarian, vegan type place. But it's in Daytona Beach. It's in the downtown area that actually got flooded. This restaurant had been flooded a few days earlier, and it was all cleaned out and perfect. You couldn't even tell. Well, it was flooded during the hurricane, but it had already been a week since that had happened. And one of the things on the wall, on the brick wall of the inside of this restaurant, one of them is Share a Little Love Today, which definitely comes into effect after the big news out of Vegas today. And also, there is a sign that says, no radios allowed from 800 to 1700, which I thought was funny because that refers to AM radio. And basically, it's saying no AM radio stations, which I work for during my full-time job. Beware of attack gecko is another sign on this wall. So see all the fun signs and the inside of this wonderful restaurant, the Dancing Avocado, at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com, where you can also help out the show through the Amazon link. Click on that, buy whatever it is you're going to buy, and that helps us out. There's also the PayPal. You can help us out that way. You'll get a special greeting from all the Cafe Anyway characters, and you'll become an inglorious Mike's Daily Podcaster. Hey, there's also a happy birthday mom on the wall of this wonderful restaurant. Okay, let's get to the segment called
News Random.
Mike is awesome.
Ginormous.
Sad news today. Right across the strip from the Mandalay Bay and the Luxor hotels at the Las Vegas Village, there was a shooting that happened from the hotel. The gunman killed at least 50 people, wounding more than 200 at a country music festival. This happened yesterday. The suspect has been ID'd as Stephen Paddock. This is the worst mass shooting in modern American history. He was 64, from Nevada, a town called Mesquite. That's about 80 miles northeast of Las Vegas. He had been known to local law enforcement. The shooting is not believed to be connected to any terrorism, this according to NBC News. And that's the big news. Something more light as we wrap up the show, because I don't have much time left, and we go outside a cafe anyway, where we bring you Mike's Daily Podcast somewhere in Podcastro Valley. There's this new thing called a near space balloon, and Worldview launched it, an edge of space balloon. Worldview has a dream of replacing satellites with edge of space balloons that have long been in the making, and not without some hiccups in its initial flight, which included KFC chicken in a publicity stunt, ended prematurely thanks to a leak. Things are going more smoothly. This weekend, though, the startup has completed the first launch of a Stratolite balloon from its new headquarters in Tucson, where it hopes to turn balloon launches into a routine occurrence. Right now, the balloon doesn't exactly last long. The longest lasting flight was 27 hours, which would only be useful for the briefest of uses. However, the Tucson launch lays the groundwork for much more. It's where Worldview will both launch and manufacture many of its balloons. It starts a new phase of refinement that could lead to a balloon which stays afloat for months. That in turn could lead to balloons that replace satellites for long-term science experiments, weather tracking, and observation. There are even hopes for passenger pods that can enable everything from manned science missions to not quite space tourism. Wow, this is so Jules Verne. And I forget if it was Facebook or Google that wanted to put balloons up in the air over like South America that had little reflectors that allowed people... It would basically give Wi-Fi to an entire country with these balloons sitting up in the air. Fascinating. All right, well, that's today's show. I don't know if it informed you, but... maybe it was a nice little... that was the other thing in Daytona Beach when I talked to the Daytona Beachians when I was visiting my mom. They don't know what the hell a podcast is. I tried to explain what I do, and they're like, yeah, what? They're working men and women, these Daytona Beachians. They don't have time for innovation. They're all about the... Well, I shouldn't say that, because when I lived in Huntsville, Alabama, the first year I lived there in 2007, I remember somebody... I was in some store and I overheard somebody going, yeah, there's this new thing called Pandora. And you can listen to all kinds of songs all in a row.
I'm 87 years old. I've been around since dirt was born.
It's the most fascinating thing. And Pandora now is like ancient. It's been around so long. Now people are on to other things. But tell your friends about podcasts. Tell your friends to get off Facebook. And tell your friends to have a wonderful Monday. Next show, we're going to have Benita, the disgruntled fiddle player, and the brewmaster.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com. Email Mike now at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye!